Imagine this. You're sitting in your car, replaying an argument in your head, checking your bank balance for the hundredth time, feeling restless, frustrated, and powerless. And then it hits you 90% of your stress, mistakes, and missed opportunities all come from three things you control but rarely do: your words, your thoughts, and your money. Master these, and suddenly life stops controlling you, and you start controlling life. The first key point is about controlling your mouth, and it begins the moment you realize that the words you speak are not just sounds, they are seeds. Every sentence you let slip into the air carries the power to grow into something real, something tangible in your life and in the lives of those around you. Think about the last time you snapped at someone in frustration. Perhaps it was a partner, a colleague, or even a stranger. That single angry word lingered far longer than the moment itself, creating tension, doubt, or resentment. Our mouths are not innocent, they are instruments of creation or destruction. And yet, most of us walk around as though the words we choose don't matter, as though conversation is just noise. But noise shapes the air we breathe. It builds the atmosphere of our relationships, our work, and our inner peace. There is a quiet power in restraint. Consider the parent who listens to their teenagers' endless complaints without interrupting, or the manager who responds to criticism calmly instead of reacting in the heat of the moment. These moments, seemingly small, are not about politeness, they are about mastery. When you control your mouth, you control the ripple of influence that spreads from you into the world. Words spoken in haste can ignite arguments that last for weeks, months, even years. Words spoken with intention can calm storms, open doors, and inspire trust. One man I knew, a cab driver, told stories of passengers who left his car feeling lighter, not because of where he drove them, but because of what he said or didn't say. Silence, or the right word at the right moment, became a tool for connection, for transformation, for control. Every conversation carries a reflection of your inner state. If your mind is chaotic, your words will betray that chaos. If your thoughts are critical and impatient, your words will mirror that impatience, spilling over into every interaction. But if you take even a moment to pause, to breathe, to weigh your words before they leave your lips, the difference is staggering. It is like the difference between dropping a pebble into a pond and tossing a boulder. The pebble makes a gentle ripple that spreads without breaking the surface, while the boulder shatters everything in its path. People underestimate the pebble. They underestimate the subtle, quiet way that careful speech can transform relationships, prevent misunderstandings, and even change the trajectory of their own life. Consider the power of storytelling, a humble example of what words can do. A teacher I once met would begin each day with a short story, sometimes drawn from the struggles of people no one remembered, sometimes from her own life. She never shouted, never lectured. She simply spoke in a way that made her students feel seen, understood, and capable. Years later, those students remembered not the curriculum, but the words that had touched something inside them. Single narrative delivered thoughtfully had shifted perspectives, instilled hope, and left an imprint that formal lessons could never reach. Words have the power to plant understanding in minds, but only if they are chosen, cultivated, and released with care. Control of your mouth is also control over yourself. Many of us have experienced moments where we said things we regretted, blurted truths too raw, complaints too sharp, sarcasm too bitter. In those seconds, we lose not only the respect of others but our own sense of calm. Imagine walking through a house of mirrors and smashing one reflection after another. Each time you speak impulsively, every careless word chips away at your own inner peace. But when you practice restraint, the house of mirrors remains intact. Your reflections are clear, stable, and aligned. The discipline of speech is a form of self-respect. It tells the world and yourself that your inner life matters, that your calm matters, and that you will not allow every fleeting emotion to dictate your reality. Words can also be bridges to opportunity. I remember a young woman who entered a networking event, nervous, unsure of her place. She spoke carefully, asked questions, and listened deeply. She didn't dominate conversations or force attention. She simply let her words land with clarity and curiosity. By the end of the evening, doors opened to mentorships, collaborations, and friendships. Contrast that with someone else in the same room, loudly asserting their point without listening, leaving a trail of irritation. The difference was not in skill or experience, it was in the awareness of words, the respect for the impact they carry. When you control your mouth, you are not silencing yourself. You are amplifying the right parts of your voice at the right moments, letting your influence flow naturally, effortlessly. Finally, controlling your mouth is a daily exercise in presence. It asks you to notice the habitual chatter that fills your day, the complaints about traffic, the idle gossip, the repetitive small talk that costs energy and focus. It asks you to pause before responding, to weigh the consequences of what you say, and to consider whether your words are building, inspiring, or breaking. A man in a quiet town made it a habit to greet everyone with a small, thoughtful observation rather than a generic hello. People remembered him. They didn't just remember the words, they remembered the attention, the care, the deliberate choice to speak meaningfully. Mastering your mouth is not about perfection, it's about attention, intentionality, and the steady recognition that your words are alive, that they carry weight, and that every syllable can either set you free or bind you in patterns you don't want. The second key point is about controlling your mind, and it begins with the realization that your thoughts are not just random clouds drifting through the sky. They are the architects of your reality. Every fear, every doubt, every fleeting worry is quietly building something tangible in your life, whether you notice it or not. Consider the man who wakes up each morning convinced he will fail, who replays past mistakes like a broken record. By noon, his energy is drained, his creativity stifled, his actions cautious or hesitant. The mind is a silent partner in every choice you make, and if left untamed, it will direct your life with the subtlety of a puppeteer, moving strings you cannot see. Learning to master your thoughts is not about forcing positivity, it is about recognizing patterns, noticing when your mind drifts into chaos, and gently guiding it back to clarity. Most of us have experienced the mind's endless chatter, the way it loops over problems, exaggerates fears, and paints worst-case scenarios in vivid color. A woman I once knew would lie awake at night, running over conversations, rehearsing apologies, worrying about things she had no control over. Her body slept, but her mind was awake, crafting anxiety into a daily companion. Controlling the mind begins with noticing these patterns. It is not about silencing thoughts completely, it is about creating a space between you and the noise, a distance that allows observation without reaction. Imagine sitting by a river and watching the water flow past. You do not need to grab every leaf that floats by. You simply notice and let it continue downstream. That is the practice of mental control. Thoughts are contagious, not just internally but externally. The person who walks into a room tense and suspicious spreads unease without speaking a word. Conversely, the person who walks in calm, thoughtful, and grounded radiates stability, influencing everyone around them. A teacher I met had a reputation for patience that seemed almost effortless. Parents often asked for her secret, and she said simply, "I don't let the chaos outside enter my mind. I meet each child where they are, not where my fear or frustration wants to take them." The mind is like a garden. If you let weeds of worry, resentment, or comparison grow unchecked, they will overturn the flowers of creativity, focus, and confidence. Control is the act of tending, of pruning the thoughts that do not serve you. Control also means understanding the stories you tell yourself. Every person carries internal narratives about their past failures, their limitations, the labels others have placed on them. A young man I knew believed he was bad at money because of mistakes his parents made, repeating the same cycle of stress and poor decisions. It was not a lack of intelligence or skill. It was the unchallenged story he told himself daily. Controlling the mind is rewriting those stories. It is asking, is this belief true? Does it serve me? What could I believe instead? Our minds are not static, they are responsive. A single shift in perspective, practiced consistently, can cascade into entirely new behaviors, choices, and opportunities. Emotions are born in the mind. Anger, envy, and fear are not external attacks, they are internal responses to interpretations. Think of a driver cut off in traffic. One person seethes for minutes, feeling the injustice deeply. Another inhales, acknowledges the frustration, and lets it pass. The difference is not circumstance, it is mind control. By observing emotions without letting them dictate speech or action, you reclaim power, you stop being a leaf blown by every breeze of external events, and start being the root that holds steady in any storm. Even small moments of conscious awareness accumulate over time, creating resilience and emotional intelligence that transforms every relationship, every interaction, every decision. Control over the mind is also control over focus. Life is full of distractions. News feeds, notifications, ions, endless comparisons. A young writer I knew spent years jumping from one idea to another, never finishing, never building. When she began training her mind to focus in short, deliberate bursts, something remarkable happened. Her projects began to grow roots. Control is not about endless discipline or harsh restriction. It is about choosing where your attention flows. It is choosing which seeds to water and which to leave untouched. The mind is a river, and you can decide whether it spills over into chaos or channels into purpose. Finally, mastery of the mind requires patience and self-compassion. A man training for his first marathon did not start running 10 miles a day. He started with a single block, gradually increasing distance as his endurance and confidence grew. Thoughts are no different. You cannot silence every anxious or negative idea instantly, but you can acknowledge them, understand them, and redirect them. The reward is a mind that is not constantly reacting, doubting, or fearing, but one that creates space for clarity, creativity, and deliberate action. When you learn to steward your thoughts, you are no longer a passenger in your life. You are the driver, navigating with awareness, purpose, and a calm confidence that transforms every moment. The third key point is about controlling your money. And it begins with the simple truth that money is not just paper, numbers, or digits on a screen. It is freedom, influence, and the quiet power to shape your life. I once knew a man who spent every paycheck the moment it arrived, chasing fleeting pleasures, buying moments of happiness that evaporated in a day. By the time he realized what he had done, he was trapped, paired in cycles of debt, stress, and regret, wondering why life always seemed to outrun him. Money left uncontrolled is like water flowing through a cracked vessel. No matter how much you pour in, it leaks away before it nourishes anything meaningful. Learning to control your money is not about greed or obsession. It is about ensuring that every dollar serves a purpose, that it builds rather than depletes, that it becomes a tool instead of a chain. Many people fear money, or worse, they ignore it, believing they are not good with numbers, or that financial planning is too complicated for them. I remember a young woman who inherited a modest sum from her grandparents. She left it untouched in a savings account for years, thinking it would grow magically. Meanwhile, inflation quietly eroded its value. The lesson is clear: money cannot take care of itself. Your attention, your decisions, and your discipline determine whether it multiplies or dwindles. Just like a garden left untended will be overrun with weeds, Your finances left unexamined will be eroded by small, unnoticed drains, impulsive purchases, unnecessary fees, or careless habits. To control money is to take responsibility for the seeds you plant and the soil you nurture, knowing that growth comes from deliberate care. Control over money begins with clarity. Too many people live paycheck to paycheck, unsure of where their money goes, feeling like it slips through their fingers without reason. I once spoke to a musician who tracked every expense, from rent to coffee to the strings on his guitar, and he said, "I didn't realize how much freedom I had until I saw where my money was actually going." Knowing your financial landscape is not boring, it is empowering. When you understand every inflow and outflow, you gain insight into your habits, your priorities, and your potential. The awareness itself changes behavior. Suddenly, frivolous spending loses its grip, and the ability to invest in your dreams becomes real, not theoretical. Money also tests your patience and discipline. The instant gratification culture surrounds us with temptations. Gadgets, experiences, subscriptions, and lifestyles that promise happiness but deliver only fleeting satisfaction. A man I met, building his first small business, had to resist the urge to buy luxury items he couldn't afford, redirecting every extra dollar into equipment, marketing, and staff. 2 years later, the business thrived, and the same man could finally enjoy comforts he had once denied himself, but this time with security and choice. Controlling money is not about deprivation, it is about deferring pleasure so that your choices in the future are richer, freer, and more deliberate. Every small decision to save, to invest wisely, or to spend intentionally compounds into greater freedom and confidence. Debt is a shadow that follows those who do not control their money. I remember a friend who lived as if tomorrow would always provide, borrowing to live beyond his means, never thinking the consequences could arrive so quickly. When the bills piled up, anxiety consumed him, and opportunities slipped through his fingers because he had no room to act. Money control is freedom from these invisible chains. It is the ability to choose, to take risks, to say yes to opportunities without fear, and to act decisively in the moment. When your resources are managed, the world stops being a source of stress and becomes a canvas on which you can paint the life you want. Generosity is another layer of mastery. Controlling money does not mean hoarding, it means choosing wisely how to give. I once knew a teacher who lived modestly but donated thoughtfully to causes she believed in. Her impact was profound, not because she gave everything, but because she gave consciously. When you control money, you can use it to create influence, to help others, and to make choices that align with your values instead of reacting to impulses or emergencies. True control comes when money becomes a tool for intentional action rather than a source of anxiety or ego. Finally, controlling money is about mindset. It is about believing that you are capable of managing what comes to you and that your future is shaped by the habits you cultivate today. I remember a family who started small, saving a little each week, teaching their children to respect money as a tool rather than a toy. Over a decade, that consistency built security, opportunities, and confidence that could never have been achieved by luck alone. Control is not a single act. It is a lifestyle, a constant awareness, a set of habits that allow you to make choices rather than be forced into them. When you control your money, you step into a life where decisions are made from power, not panic, where dreams are funded and fears diminished, and where every dollar becomes a step toward mastery. The fourth key point is about the connection between your mouth, mind, and money, and it begins with the realization that these three elements are not separate parts of life. They are threads woven into a single fabric. I once met a man who was brilliant at managing his finances, yet he constantly argued with colleagues and friends, spewing careless words without thinking. No matter how much money he earned, his relationships faltered, opportunities slipped, and the stress of isolation hovered over him. Then I met another person who spoke with care, trained their mind to focus, yet had no financial awareness. They lived in constant anxiety, watching life pass by with fear of scarcity. The truth is clear: mastery in only one area leaves you unbalanced. Your words influence your thoughts shape your actions, and your money reflects the alignment or misalignment of both. Every decision we make is a reflection of this connection. Think about a young woman trying to start a business. She spoke confidently in meetings, yet her mind doubted every choice, and she spent money impulsively to prove herself. The result was chaos. Contracts fell through, projects stalled, and confidence wavered. Words without mental clarity become noise, and money without focus becomes wasted effort. Control flows from harmony. When speech, thought, and resources move in the same direction, actions gain precision, and life begins to feel manageable, even in the midst of uncertainty. It is like a symphony. One instrument playing out of tune can disrupt the entire performance. But when every note is aligned, the music carries power, emotion, and clarity. The connection also reveals itself in moments of stress. A man I knew was walking through a financial crisis. His mind raced with panic, and his words to his family were sharp and defensive. Bills accumulated, tension in the home grew, and opportunities for help were missed because his reactions were reactive, not controlled. The moment he learned to pause, to calm his thoughts, choose his words carefully, and make deliberate financial decisions, the crisis did not vanish, but he navigated it with clarity. The lesson is subtle but profound. One area unchecked will erode the others. Thoughts infected by fear produce words that harm relationships, which in turn influence how you handle money, often leading to poor choices. Alignment is not optional, it is essential. Consider influence and trust. People do not just respond to your words or your money or your intelligence. They respond to the harmony between them. A leader I observed managed a team during a high-pressure project. He spoke with honesty, approached problems thoughtfully, and invested company resources strategically. His team trusted him because they saw consistency. Every action matched every word, and every decision reflected careful thought. Misalignment, on the other hand, breeds doubt. How often do we see people with money but reckless speech, or brilliant ideas but impulsive financial choices? The mind, the mouth, and money act as a mirror for each other, and others instinctively sense the gaps. This connection is also deeply personal. You may have noticed how an angry thought can slip into words, triggering arguments that cost you more than you realize, not just in relationships, but in confidence, time, and opportunities. Similarly, financial stress can cloud your mind, making you short-tempered, hesitant, or reactive in conversations. A friend of mine, struggling with debt, would storm into meetings frustrated, making mistakes he otherwise would have avoided. Once he began budgeting, planning, and taking small steps to control money, the calmness reflected in his speech and the clarity in his thinking grew. It was like watching a storm settle, one ripple of control spreading to the next. Habits are the bridge between these areas. Small daily practices, choosing words intentionally, meditating or journaling for mental clarity, and making deliberate financial choices compound over time. A young entrepreneur I met had a daily routine. She spoke affirmatively about her goals, journaled every night to process her thoughts, and tracked every expense meticulously. Her life wasn't perfect, but it moved in one direction. Each aligned action reinforced the others. Focused mind, intentional speech, and smart financial moves created momentum that no single area could produce alone. Disconnection in even one area slows progress. Alignment accelerates it exponentially. Finally, understanding the connection between mouth, mind, and money is about awareness and responsibility. Life is not fragmented into silos. Your choices echo across every domain. I once visited a teacher who coached teenagers. She reminded them that words shape thoughts, thoughts shape habits, and habits determine resources. She illustrated it with simple examples: a careless insult leading to broken friendships, a distracted mind leading to missed opportunities, an unchecked wallet leading to stress. Every choice mattered, and the patterns were unmistakable. When we accept this responsibility, we stop blaming circumstances or luck. Control in one area is good, but control in all three, words, mind, and money, is mastery in motion, the key, engine behind deliberate, empowered living. The fifth key point is about discipline, and it begins with the understanding that discipline is not a cage but a gateway. I once met a young artist who spent years chasing inspiration, waiting for the perfect moment to paint. His canvases remained blank, his ideas fleeting, and frustration grew. One day, a mentor told him, "Discipline is not restriction, it is the brush in your hand, the act of showing up every day, whether you feel like it or not." That shifted everything. Discipline gave him freedom, the freedom to create consistently, to turn fleeting sparks of inspiration into tangible work. It is not about denying yourself, it is about giving yourself the structure to realize what matters most. Discipline begins with small, deliberate choices that seem insignificant at first, but over time compound into profound impact. I knew a man training for a long-distance hike who would wake up before dawn each day, putting on his boots and walking a few miles, regardless of weather or mood. At the time, it seemed tedious, almost pointless. But months later, when the mountain loomed in front of him, he climbed with endurance that felt effortless. The same principle applies to life: saying no to impulsive distractions, refusing to engage in petty arguments, and choosing to invest time and energy in meaningful work may feel small, but it builds strength, stamina, and confidence that carry through every challenge. Discipline is not perfection, it is persistence. I recall a woman learning to run after years of sedentary life. Some days she barely completed a mile, other days she stumbled, lost focus, or skipped entirely. Yet she continued. Each day she returned, she rebuilt trust in herself. Discipline is a conversation with your future self, a promise that you will show up even when circumstances are inconvenient, emotions are low, or energy is weak. It is the bridge between intention and achievement, a quiet pact that your life will reflect the effort you commit consistently, not the whims of motivation or luck. The power of discipline lies in its ability to protect you from chaos. Life is full of temptations and distraction, subtle and loud, that can derail even the most talented and intelligent person. A man I met, running a small business, faced endless pressures: friends asking for favors, deals that seemed urgent but weren't, and constant noise of social media. Each distraction threatened to pull him off course. But his discipline, his habit of focusing on what truly mattered each day, allowed him to navigate without panic, without regret, without wasted energy. Discipline does not remove the storms, but it steadies the rudder, ensuring you reach your destination. Discipline also strengthens self-respect. There is a quiet dignity in keeping promises to yourself, in honoring commitments that no one is watching. I knew a musician who practiced scales for hours every day, not for applause or recognition, but because he had promised himself mastery. That commitment created a confidence that radiated outward, not because of skill alone, but because of integrity in action. When you cultivate discipline in small, consistent ways, it becomes a reflection of your values, a mirror of your character, and a signal to the world that you are reliable, capable, and in command of your life. The ripple effect of discipline reaches every corner of life. Thoughts become clearer when your mind is trained to focus. Words gain weight when they are spoken from a grounded, controlled place. Money becomes a tool rather than a burden when handled with intention. A young woman I met who disciplined herself to meditate each morning, journal her goals, and track expenses, found that relationships improved, stress decreased, and opportunities emerged almost naturally. Discipline is not a restriction on freedom, a framework that allows freedom to expand, that converts potential into tangible results, and that shapes life into something deliberate rather than accidental. Finally, discipline is courage in action. It is the act of choosing what is necessary over what is easy, what is meaningful over what is convenient. I once spoke to a teacher who stayed late every night grading papers, not for recognition, but because she understood that mastery of her craft required attention and persistence. Her students noticed not just her knowledge but her unwavering commitment to excellence. Discipline is the quiet bravery that shows up when no one else is watching, that pushes you past resistance, boredom, or fear. It is the handhold that carries you across difficult terrain, the unseen engine behind every achievement, the force that transforms ordinary intentions into extraordinary realities. The seventh key point is about mastery as a habit, and it begins with the understanding that greatness is not a single moment, a sudden revelation, or a dramatic victory. It is the sum of countless tiny, consistent choices made over time. I once met a man who wanted to transform his life but waited for the perfect day to start. He told himself he needed clarity, energy, and courage all at once. Months passed and nothing changed. Then he realized that mastery was not about waiting for readiness. It was about showing up again and again, even when circumstances were imperfect. Each deliberate act, no matter how small, became a step toward competence, confidence, and control, turning ordinary days into a quiet accumulation of power. Mastery as a habit requires patience with yourself, the kind of patience that allows mistakes to exist without derailing progress. A young pianist I knew would stumble over a single passage for hours, sometimes days, frustrated and ready to quit. But each practice session, each repetition was not about perfection. It was about training attention, building muscle memory, and cultivating resilience. Over time, those imperfect moments layered into skill, poise, and confidence. Mastery is not born from flawless execution. It is cultivated through repeated effort, through the willingness to engage with difficulty, and through the understanding that the process itself shapes the person you are becoming. Consistency is the heartbeat of habitual mastery. I once spoke to a teacher who spent decades refining the way she taught, even in moments when students were unmotivated or lessons felt routine. Her impact was not immediate or dramatic, but over years, her influence rippled outward, shaping hundreds of lives. The world often celebrates dramatic achievements, but the quiet, repeated actions, the notes studied, the words practiced, the deliberate efforts taken daily, are what truly create lasting change. Habitual mastery is about valuing these moments, trusting that the accumulation of small intentional choices builds a foundation no external event can shake. Mastery also demands self-awareness, the ability to notice where you drift, where habits weaken, and where attention falters. A young athlete I knew would analyze every practice, every mistake, without judgment, simply observing patterns and making small adjustments. This daily reflection allowed progress to compound, and the discipline of observation became a habit itself. The most powerful habit is the habit of noticing yourself, of catching the small deviations before they grow into barriers. Without awareness, even effort can wander, and without habit, even skill can fade. Mastery requires both persistence and vigilance. The power of habitual mastery lies in its compounding effect across all areas of life. A friend of mine practiced writing for 30 minutes every morning, meditated for 10 minutes daily, and reviewed her finances weekly. At first, each action seemed inconsequential, almost tedious. Yet within a year, her clarity of thought, financial stability, and creative output had increased exponentially. The secret was not the individual actions themselves, but the rhythm they created. Habits, when aligned with intention, produce momentum, confidence, and self-trust. They turn fleeting effort into lasting influence, and potential into tangible results. Mastery as habit also teaches humility and resilience. A man I knew who ran a bakery would rise every morning before dawn, perfecting recipes and attending to details most would consider insignificant. Competitors mocked his painstaking care, but over years, his reputation for quality and consistency grew unmatched. Habitual mastery does not demand recognition or applause. It thrives in the quiet commitment to do the work, to refine the craft, to improve the small things relentlessly. It is a shield against chaos, a hedge against mediocrity, and a way to cultivate resilience when external validation is absent. Finally, mastery as a habit transforms identity. It is not merely about what you achieve, it is about who you become in the process. I met a young writer who, through daily practice, discipline, and reflection, began to think differently, act differently, and respond differently to challenges. The habits he cultivated shaped him into someone capable of handling opportunities, setbacks, and relationships with composure and attention. When mastery is habitual, it becomes invisible yet undeniable. It molds character, builds confidence, and aligns action with purpose. It is the quiet force that turns ordinary human effort into extraordinary life, one deliberate choice at a time. And now, if you take a moment to look inward, you begin to see the quiet thread that connects it all. The choices you make in your words, your thoughts, and the way you handle what comes to you. Life is not a series of isolated moments, but a flow of decisions, small and large, that shape the person you become and the life you live. Each conversation you hold, each thought you entertain, each dollar you steward, they are all reflections of your awareness, your care, and your presence. Mastery is not about perfection, it is about the calm consistency of tending to these moments over and over until they no longer feel like effort, but like the natural rhythm of your being. You may carry doubts, regrets, or fears from yesterday, but they do not define the possibilities of today. Control is not something to seize violently. It is something to nurture quietly, deliberately, like a plant that grows steadily toward the light. With every word chosen, every thought observed, every decision handled with intention, you reclaim ground that life often seems to take from you. There is a dignity in this process, a subtle strength that does not demand attention but quietly reshapes the world around you. The more profound changes are often invisible at first. They are the habits you build, the discipline you practice, the patience you cultivate. You may not feel different at the start, and yet over time, these consistent, deliberate actions accumulate into a life that feels steadier, more coherent, and more aligned with who you truly want to be. There is a power in this, less flashy than dramatic transformation, but far more enduring because it comes from the inside out, rooted in your own attention, integrity, and care. When your mouth, mind, and resources move together, when your small choices are intentional, when your discipline and habits take root, you create a quiet momentum that carries you even when circumstances are uncertain. You become less reactive and more deliberate, less shaken by noise and more guided by clarity. You discover that strength is not loud, it is measured, steady, and profoundly reliable. And in that steadiness, you find a sense of freedom that no external force can take from you. Your life does not need to be extraordinary to be significant. It only needs to be attended to with awareness. Each step you take in mastery, over words, over thoughts, over resources, is a reclaiming of space, a reclaiming of yourself. It is the subtle shaping of character, the accumulation of quiet victories that leave a lasting imprint on who you are and how you move through the world. And so, as you carry these thoughts forward, let them settle deep within you. Let them become the undercurrent of how you speak, how you think, and how you live. There is no rush, no spectacle required, only the steady rhythm of intention, repeated again and again, until the life you desire emerges naturally from the care you have invested. In this stillness, you realize that mastery is not a distant destination or a fleeting achievement. It is the life you are building, moment by moment, choice by choice. And as you step back into the world, you do so with clarity, grounded strength, and the quiet certainty that the life you shape will be a reflection of the attention, care, and presence you bring to every day.